So I have put together this predicted paper for Foundation Edexcel by looking at the last 4 years since COVID and analysing the topics that have appeared the most on the non-calculator paper. Okay, so question 1 has asked you to write 18% as a decimal. Well, as it's a percentage, you should know that 18 as a percentage is 18 out of 100. So as a fraction, it's 18 over 100, but we need to write that as a decimal. So this is where place value comes in. And if you've got your decimal point here, after the decimal point you have tenth and then you have hundredths. So if I was going to write this in, that's going to be 0.18, which gives me 18 hundredths. So my final answer for 1 mark is 0.18. Is asking you to convert grams to kilograms. There's a conversion every year on one of the papers. So you need to know your centimetres to metres, litres to millilitres, grams to kilograms, etc. So this is grams to kilograms. So I always like to write down the conversion first. So we know, or hopefully you should know, that 1 kilogram is equal to 1,000 grams. So if I'm going from grams to kilograms, my number is going from 1,000 down to 1. So it's getting smaller. That tells me I'm going to be dividing by 1,000. So I have got the number here, 2,580. And if I divide it by 1,000, all the digits shift 3 spaces to the right. So they're going, my decimal point is here. All these digits are going to go 3 spaces that way, 3, and so on. So I end up with 2.580, but you don't need to write the 0 on the end. You can just write 2.58 kilograms for 1 mark. If you write the 0, they do normally still give you the mark, but 2.58 is the correct answer. Okay, let's have a look at question number 3. Very common. There'll either be a factors or a multiples question somewhere on the paper. This one has asked you to write down all the factors. Sometimes it won't say all, but this says all the factors of 16. So the best way to do factors is to do them in pairs. So I always start with 1 and 16, because 1 multiplied by 16 is 16. So they are factors of 16. Then I've got 2 multiplied by 8 gives me 16. 3 doesn't go into 16. And then I've got 4 multiplied by 4. I don't need to write 4 twice. Gives me 16. 5 doesn't go in. 6 doesn't go in. 7 doesn't go in. And then I'm back to 8, which is a number that I've already got here. So they're my factors. It doesn't matter which order you put them in, but you then write them on the answer line. 1, 2, I'm going to put them in numerical order. 1, 2, 4, 8 and 16. However, if you left them here and just wrote them here like this, they would normally still give you the mark, but you need all factors to get 2 marks. Okay, question 3. Sorry, I apologise, question 4. So question 4 has asked you to simplify. Again, there's always a simplify question somewhere on the paper. I've put in multiply and add and subtract just to cover both bases. So this has asked me to do 4 lots of 3x. I'm just writing it again here, bigger, which is the same as writing 4 times 3 times x. So we can only times our like terms here, which is my 4 and my 3. So 4 times 3 gives me 12. If I multiply that by x, I just stick the x on the end here. Part B has asked me to simplify 7a minus 3a, add 6a. Nice and easy as they're all the same letter. 7 take away 3 is 4. Add 6 is going to give me 10. And it's 10a because we had a. We don't forget to put the a on, quite a common mistake that people often leave off. So 1 mark each for each of those. Right, question 5. There's always, on every paper, every year, there has been some sort of calculation with money question. So this one says, Nisha bought 4 cookies. She paid with a £10 note, received £4 change. How much does each cookie cost? They've actually missed the word does in this question, but So the first thing I would do, she's paid with a £10 note and she's received £4 change. So therefore 10 minus 4 means she paid £6 for the cookies. She bought 4 cookies, so I'm going to need to do £6 shared into 4 to work out how much each costs. You might be able to work that out in your head, or you could half 6 and half it again. It's the same as dividing by 4. 4s into 6 goes once, remainder 2. And then 4s into 20 goes 5 times. 4s, because it's money, I like to have 2 decimal places, so I'm going to put a 0 on the end there. So each cookie costs me £1.50. So it's good to show all of your working out. Okay, next question. Question 6. Again, every year, in the past 4 years in the summer exam, there has been a bar charts question, either to draw or interpret. They haven't had one for a while with a tally, which is why I've put one of those in there. Again, it should be easy marks here, but students always lose marks on these questions for forgetting to label or forgetting to use a correct scale. So these are really important, and making sure that your scale is even scale. It must be an even scale. So you've got 2 marks here for doing the tally. So I would literally do this by going one by one. So I've got white, cross it off and put a line. White, cross it off and put a line. Black, cross it off, white, and so on. And then I've got red. I'm just going to do this quickly. Black, red, blue, white, blue, black, blue. It's a good idea to do it this way so you don't miss any. Black, blue. I need to make sure I don't miss any now that I'm talking at the same time. Black, when you get to 5 in a tally, you strike through. I've crossed over the ones at the bottom, which doesn't help. Black again here. Blue, I can just about see them. White and blue. So there we have it. And then I work out how many I've got here. So in my tally, I have got 5 plus 2 is 7. 5 add 1 is 6. I've got 2 and I've got 5. Let's just make sure that they add up to 20, which is how many cars I've got here. 7 add 6 is 13. Add 2 is 15. And they do add up to 20. Okay, good. So that should get me my first 2 marks. Now I need to draw a bar chart. So it's really important. You must use a ruler and a pencil. Ruler and a pencil. Because in your exam, if you make a mistake and it's in pen, you can't cross it out. Whereas with pencil, you can rub it out. And they like to see graphs drawn with straight lines and a ruler. For speed purposes, I'm going to just draw this freehand, so I do apologise. I need to have my frequency up the side, and it's got to go up to 20. So I'm going to start here, and you don't want it to be teeny tiny, so I'm going to go up on 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So it takes up most of the space. And then you must draw these lines on, otherwise it doesn't count as you having a scale. The numbers need to have pegs. You need to show where they belong. Okay, so then I would write my numbers on, which I'll do afterwards. And then along the bottom I need black, blue, red and white. Because this is colours of cars, it's not continuous data, there needs to be gaps in the bars. So I'm going to have a space for black, a space for, and a space in between blue, space in between red. I'm going to rub that out because that is not straight at all. So let's rub that out. So I'm going to go along here. I'm just going to draw a straight line like this. So I am going to draw my bars in a different colour, and I'm going to put my scale on. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 and 20. And then you must label it frequency. I'm just going to put frequency like that. Okay, otherwise you don't get the mark for labelling your scale. I'm going to draw my bars here. So 1 bar there, my next bar here, my next bar here and my next bar here, so I'm not going to need this bit on the end here. Obviously you're going to be drawing this much neater than I am with a ruler and a pencil. So now I'm going to draw my bars in green. So this one's got to go up to 7, and again you should still be using a ruler and a pencil. You can shade them in, you don't have to. I'm just going to shade them in so that you can see for the purposes of the video. So that is my first bar there, and I'm going to label that black. Now I would probably, I can't do it on here, but I would probably write vertically upwards. So I'm just going to put black here. And then I've got blue, which is 6, so I'm going to go up to 6. So I'm going to shade that in there. And then I've got red goes up to 2, so I'm going to do that last one. So red goes up to, I'm going to label this one blue. Red goes up to 2. You want to write yours in full, but obviously I'm doing it for speed purposes. So that's going to be my red there. And then I've got white goes up to 5. So actually, my graph didn't need to go up to 20 at all. My graph only needed to go up to 7. So let's draw that again. See, I'm rushing here, and this is what happens. When you rush, you make mistakes. So don't do what I've done, okay? In your exam, make sure you use a ruler and a pencil, because I would have been in trouble there. So my biggest frequency here is what I should have looked at is 7. So I only need to go up to 7. So you could even go up in ones. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've got that there. And then I'm going to go across here. It's very hard to do that ruler. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then this is my frequency. And then again, I'm going to have my bars along the bottom. So black goes up to 7, so it's going to go all the way up there. Then I've got blue goes up to 6, so I'm going to go like that. And then red goes up to 2, and then white goes up to 5. So this is why you should never rush in an exam, because you'll make a silly mistake like I did. Black here, blue here. This is black, blue. Write them in full. I just can't fit them on my screen. And white here. Okay, and then I'm going to label this with colour. So I've labelled my axes. I've got a scale. My scale is even and it's marked with these pegs here. You need those on there. Okay, it's really important you have those. And I would have, if I'd done this by hand, used a ruler and a pencil to get me a full 3 marks there. So don't lose easy marks on a bar chart question, and don't rush. Okay, 5 marks if you've got that all correct. Okay, question 8. Again, very common to either forming an expression or forming a formula on paper 1. So what I like to do here is, well, we're told apples cost 25p each, bananas cost 20p each. We've got to work out the total cost of A, apples, and B, bananas is C. So I'm writing a formula for the total cost of A, apples, and B, bananas. So what I like to do here is, let's say I knew how many apples I was buying, and I want to buy 3 apples, and I want to buy B bananas, not B. Let's make that 6, as it looks like a 6. 6 bananas. Okay, so if I knew that, how would I work out the total cost? Well, let's see. So I've got apples cost 25p each. So I would do, you're not going to be able to see the question now. So apples cost 25p each. So I would do 3 lots of 25. That would be for my apples. For my bananas, I'm buying 6 of those, and they cost 20p each, so 6 lots of 20. To get the total cost, I would just add my 2 amounts together. However, I don't know that I'm buying 3 apples, do I? I don't know. 3, I'm told I'm buying A apples. So I'm going to get rid of my 3 and I'm going to write A instead. So I'm going to rub that out and I'm going to write A times 25. And the same with bananas. I don't know that I'm buying 6. Luckily, it looks like a B already, but I'm going to rub it out anyway. I'm going to replace my 6 with a B. So I'm doing B times 20, then I'm adding them together. Now, in algebra, you don't write times signs, and you always make sure that the number comes first. So I'm going to write 25A plus 20B. So that's the total cost of my apples and my bananas, and it tells me is C. That means I'm going to equal it to C, and that is my final answer for 2 marks. So you'd get a mark for having this part, and then if you equaled it to C, that would give you 2 marks there. So that's question 8. Okay, question 9. Question 9 has given me a function machine, again very common on paper 1. You've got input, you're timesing by 4, taking away 7, and then you get your output, which is basically your answer. So this is saying, what is the output, the answer, when the input is 6? So I'm going to put 6 in here. So I'm going to put 6, start with 6. I'm going to times by 4 first, because that's the first thing that I'm told to do. And then I'm going to subtract 7, and then that's going to give me my answer. So 6 times by 4 equals 24, and then 24, which is my answer here, subtract my 7 gives me 17. So that is my output, my answer. Now the one below is asking you to do it in the opposite direction. It says, what is the input when the output is 25? So when the answer is 25, I've got to work backwards to work out what I put in the beginning. So I'm going to do the inverse of these operations because I'm working backwards. So the opposite of take away 7 is to add 7. And the opposite of timesing by 4 is to divide by 4. So when I'm going the other way, I'm going to add 7 first. Then I'm going to divide by 4. And then I will get my input. So 25 add 7 is 32. 32 divided by 4 is 8. So I must have put 8 in to begin. I can always check. 8, let's try it here. I'm going to go 8 times 4 is 32. Take away 7. Yeah, that gives me 25. And so that is question 9 for 3 marks. So we've got question 10. And it's asking you to write down the coordinates of this point here, point A. So a common mistake students make here is to get the coordinates the wrong way round. You go along the corridor and then up or down the stairs. So if you start from 0 to get to my point A, you're going to go along 4 and then you're going to go down 2. So it's going to be 4, negative 2. So the x coordinate always goes first and then the y coordinate comes second. So the next point I've been asked to mark with a cross, and this is important because people often write their coordinate as the letter they've been given, and you won't get it marked if you do that. It says mark with a cross. The point 4, 3. So I'm going to go along 4, and then I'm going to go up 3, and I'm going to mark with a cross. And then label it B, so the label is written next to, the letter is written next to the cross like that. So do not do your coordinate like that because you won't get the mark for doing that. You must put the cross and put the letter next to it. Okay, part C, on the grid, draw the line with the equation x equals negative 1. So if we have a look here, x equals negative 1, this is my x-axis. So x equals negative 1 is here, so my line needs to go through there. Often got wrong because the x-axis is horizontal, so people think the line x equals negative 1 has to be horizontal, but it doesn't. It goes through the point x equals negative 1. And if you have a look at the coordinates all the way along this line here, you get, so you've got negative 1, 5. -1 4, -1 3, and so on. So if you look, the x coordinate is always -1. So that is the line x equals -1 there, going through x equals -1. So that's 1 mark for having that correct. Okay, so question number 11. Here is a list of 7 numbers. The mean of the numbers is 9. Now, in order to get the mean, you need to add all of the numbers together and divide by how many numbers you've got. So, if I was going to find the mean, I would do 11, add 6, add 7, add 10, add 7, add 9, add, well, I don't know what this is, so I'm just going to put an X there. And I would divide my answer by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because that's how many numbers I've got. So writing this down would get you a mark. So then I'm going to work out what I've got, and I can work out from there. I also know that the answer, to this is 9. So that will hopefully help me. So I'm going to add up these numbers here. I've got 11, add 6 is 17, add 7 is 24, add 10 is 34, add 7 is 41, add 9 is 50. So I've got 50. Add x over 7 equals 9. So I've simplified what the expression that I've made here. So the opposite of dividing by 7, because I'm having to work backwards, is to times by 7. So I'm working backwards to work out what I had originally. So I end up with 50 plus x equals 9 times 7 is 63. So x must be whatever I add to 50 to get 63. So therefore x is equal to 13. And that is my answer to question 11. Okay, question 12. I've been told that ABC is an isosceles triangle. Well, we can see that from the 2 lines drawn on here. Work out the size of the angle marked X, which is here. Now, often people think that this angle X is equal to this 65 over here, but these are the 2 sides that are equal in my triangle. So the 2 angles that are equal in the isosceles triangle are the 2 angles below the equal sides at the bottom, at the base. So these are the equal sides. So this angle is equal to this angle here, which we already know is 65. So the way I would write this is I would put this is 65. I would show it on the diagram. Let me rub that off so you can see, because I've drawn all over there now. So the way I would do this is I would write 65 to show on the diagram in case you don't know how to label. And then I would also write it at the side. This is angle ABC. So ABC, the little angle, is equal to 65. And it hasn't asked me for reasons, but if it did, you would write isosceles triangle has 2 equal angles. So that would be my reason. And then to get x, we should know that angles in a triangle add up to 180. So I would do 180 minus my 2 lots of 65 that I've got there at the base. So that's those 2. So I'm going to do 180 minus 130. So therefore, my final answer is 50. And again, if you were asked for a reason here, you're not, but if you were, you would write angles in a triangle equal 180 degrees. But you didn't need reasons for this one, you just needed a correct answer of 50. Okay, question 13. I have been asked to calculate with fractions. Again, very common on a non-calculator paper. More likely to be on there than calculators, because when you have a calculator, you can just pop it in and work out the answer. So it's not really testing your knowledge and understanding of fractions. So I'm going to write it out a bit bigger so we can see what we're doing. At the moment, I can't add these together because I've got ninths and fifths. Common mistake that students make is to add these together and get a denominator of 14. You can't do that. It's like trying to add an apple to a banana. You can't add ninths to fifths. So what we have to do is make them the same first. So the easiest way to do this is to find a common denominator, is to multiply these two here together. So I have got 9 times 5 is 45. So that's going to be my common denominator. And because I've multiplied these two together, I have to multiply the 4 by the 5 and the 3 by the 9. Because whatever I've times the bottom by, I have to do the same to the top. On this side, I've times it by 9, so I have to times the 3 by 9. So you times across diagonally. 4 times 5 is 20, and 3 times 9 is 27. So you get a mark for writing your fractions with a common denominator. 20 add 27 is 47 over 45. I do not need to simplify or give my fraction as a mixed number because it hasn't asked me to. So if you do, and you do it incorrectly, you lose marks. So don't unless it asks you to. Okay, the next one is divide. Work out 3/5 divided by 3/8. So the rule for division is, a lot of you will know, is KFC, keep, flip, change. So we keep the first fraction as it is. We change the divide to a times, and we flip this second fraction upside down. So we keep the first, flip the second, change the divide to a times sign. So now I'm going to multiply across. When I multiply, I just multiply across here. 3 times 8 is 24. And 5 times 3 is 15. Now, if I leave my answer like this for this one, I won't get 2 marks because it says give your answer as a mixed number in its simplest form. So how many 15s go into 24? Well, that's 1. And then what have I got left over? I've got 9 15ths left over. That is still not in its simplest form because I can divide 9 and 15 by 3. So I end up with my final answer of 1 and 3/5, because 9 divided by 3 is 3 and 15 divided by 3 is 5. I'm going to rub that 5 out because it doesn't look very clear there. And that's it for question 13. Okay, question 14. Dennis gets paid £8.21 per hour he works. Each week, Dennis works 41 hours. This is the key here. Work out an estimate for the amount he gets paid. Very common, and if you're going to get an estimate question, it will be on paper 1. Sometimes it will be obvious, and sometimes it will be written in the question like this. So if you're estimating and you work out the exact answer, you get 0 marks. 0 marks. So you must estimate or you don't get the marks. Okay, so we're going to estimate, you round each of the numbers in the calculation first. So you round to one significant figure. So let's look at £8.21. My first significant figure is in the units column. So I round that to the nearest whole number. So I'm going to estimate that to be £8 per hour he works. Then he works 41 hours again. If I round that to one significant figure, my first significant figure is in the tens column. So I round to the nearest 10, which is 40. So if he gets £8 per hour, so for every hour he works, and he works for 40 hours, I'm going to do 8 times 40. Well, 8 times 4 is 32, so 8 times 40 must be 300. So that's how you get your 2 marks. 1 mark for the rounding, 2 second mark for having the correct answer. Is your answer an underestimate or an overestimate? Well, I've rounded down the amount he gets paid, so this would be less. And I've rounded down the number of hours that he's worked. So because I've rounded down the amount he's going to get paid for every hour, it's going to be an underestimate as hourly wage rounded down. So even though I've rounded the hours down as well, it's only by 1. But I'm losing 20p for every hour that he works. So that's it for 3 marks. That is question 14. Okay, question 15. You've got some cubes in a bag and 1/6 of the cubes are red, the rest are blue. You've been asked to write the ratio of red cubes to blue cubes, red to blue. So this is about knowing the conversion between ratio and fractions. So if you've got 1 out of 6, this means one of them is red out of a total of 6. 1 in 6 are red. So if 1 is red, I have 6 in total. Blue will be the total, which is 6, minus my 1 red is 5. So now I need to write the ratio of red to blue. The order is important here. Red first, blue second. So red cubes, well, I had 1 red. Blue, I've worked out here, is 5. So it's 1 to 5. And I wanted my answer in the form of 1 to n. Well, it's already in the form of 1 to something, so I don't need to change it. Sometimes you might need to then simplify that down, but that is my final answer for 2 marks. Okay, question 16. You have been asked, first of all, again, transformations comes up every single year. It will be on 1 or maybe more of your papers. It quite often comes up on paper 1. So there are 4 types of transformations that you need to know about. They are reflection, rotation, translation, and enlargement. So you could either be asked to carry out a transformation like this, or you could be asked to describe a single transformation, which means you only talk about one of these. The minute you muddle them up, you lose all your marks. So reflection, if you're doing a reflection, you state that it's a reflection, and then you state the line of reflection, which will be x equals or y equals. Rotation, you state that it's a rotation. You give the center of rotation, which is a coordinate. You give the angle and direction. So that's clockwise or anti-clockwise. Translation, you state that it's a translation. And then you give a vector. So the vector tells you, this number here tells you whether you move left or right, depending on whether it's negative or positive, left, right. And this one here tells you whether you move up or down, down or up, depending on whether it's negative or positive. So for example, if I had 2, 5, that's telling me to go 2 right and 5 up. As I changed it to -2, -5, that's saying 2 left, 5 down. And then lastly, we've got an enlargement, and that you'll give a scale factor, which could be a whole number or it could be a fraction. And then you will give a center of enlargement, which will be a coordinate. So it'll be one of those. So that's transformations in a nutshell. So you have been asked to reflect in this one in the y-axis. So nice and easy. It doesn't even give you an equation. So I'm going to just draw over the y-axis in red. Let me do that again because it's not very straight. So I am reflecting my shape in the y-axis. They could give you this as the line x equals 0. It's the same thing. The x-axis is y equals 0. So watch out for that. Okay, because people often get those muddled up. But I'm reflecting it in this red line here. So if I look at this shape, this is currently 1 square away. So I'm going to go 1 square away on the other side. Then if I look at this point over here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 squares away. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 squares away on the other side. This is 2 squares away. At the bottom here is 2 squares. So I'm going to go 2 squares the other direction. And this point here is 3 squares away. So I'm going to go 3 squares away in the other direction. So once I've done all of my points, I can then draw my reflected shape. So it's always a good idea to draw in your line of reflection first and then reflect your shape. I've actually shaded that in, but I should have read the question because it's told me to label it B. So that's what I'm going to do there. I'm going to put B there. So that would give me 2 marks. for doing my reflection. So the next one has asked me to translate. So if you think about what I said back up here, this tells me at the top here, up or down, and this tells me whether to go left or right. So if we look at what we've got here, this is telling me to go right 1, and this is positive, so it's telling me to go up 5. So the easiest way to do that is to pick a point on the shape. So I'm translating shape A. So I'm going to pick this corner here. I'm going to go 1 right, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. So that point has ended up there. I wouldn't draw the lines on like this. I'm just doing it so you can see. I'll rub them out afterwards. And then you can do that with every other point. So I can go 1 right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. Then I'm going to go with this bottom one here, 1 right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. And then I've got to do this other bottom corner, 1 right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. So my new shape is going to be here. Okay, but I wouldn't draw those lines on in your exam unless you do them in pencil so you can then rub them out afterwards. But my new shape will end up being like this. So every point has been moved, the whole shape has been moved, right 1 and up 5, and it's told me to label that C. So I'm going to rub that bit out there, and I'm going to label that C. So that is my translation for 2 marks. So question 17, they're very likely to have a multiplying or dividing question, either with whole numbers or with or decimals. Whole numbers are integers, and obviously decimals are decimals. So this has asked me to work out 2.59 multiplied by 4.8. So what I would do is I would take out the decimals, which means I'm multiplying this number by 100 and I'm multiplying this number by 10 to give me 259 multiplied by 48. There's lots of different ways of doing multiplication. You can set it out like this. You can split your number into 250 and 9, and then 40 and 8. And you can do it that way and work out each calculation and add them together. Or there's Napier's bones, which some of you might have seen, that looks like this. It depends on which method you prefer. This is the quickest method here. So I'm going to do 8 multiplied by 9 first of all, which is 72. Then I'm going to do 8 multiplied by 5, which is 40. Add the 7 that I've already got here, that's 47. Then I'm going to do 8 multiplied by 2, which is 16. Add the 4 is 20. And then I can rub out these little extra numbers I've put here at the bottom. So that's 8 multiplied by 259. Now I'm going to multiply everything by the 4, but that is a 4 that's in the tens column. So it's actually a 40. So I must put a 0, and lots of people forget to put this placeholder here and then end up with the wrong answer. So when you're timesing by 40, you have to put a 0, or anything in the second column, you have to put a 0 first. So now I can multiply by 4, as I've already got my placeholder here. 4 times 9 is 36. 4, so that was 4 times 9. I'm now doing 4 times 5 is 20. Add my 3 is going to be 23. And then 4 times 2 is 8. Add the 2 that I've got here, that is 10. And again, I can rub these little numbers out. And then I'm going to add my 2 numbers together. So 2 add 0 is 2. 7 add 6 is going to be 13. 3 add 1 is 4. 2 add 0 is 2, and then my 1 on the end. However, because it's a multiplication, because I times my original calculation by 100 and by 10, I need to divide my answer, because this answer is 1,000 times bigger. So I need to divide my answer by 100 and then by 10 to give me 12, or divide by 1,000 to give me 12.432 as my final answer. So you get a mark for having the decimal in the correct place. So 2 marks for having the correct digits, and then the 3rd mark for having the correct placement of your decimal point. So that is question 17A. Part B is asking me to divide two decimals now. So when I am dividing decimals, it doesn't work the same way as multiplication. Let me just show you an example of why division is different. So if I do 10 divided by 5, I get an answer of 2. If I times both of my numbers by 10 and do 100 divided by 50, my answer is still 2. So it gives me the same answer. I don't need to do anything to my answer. So as long as you do the same to both numbers, then you get an equivalent calculation, a sum that will give you the same answer. So you only need the number that you're dividing by to be a whole number, because that's where it makes it tricky. So what I'm going to do is I am going to times this by 10. And if I times this by 10, I have to times this by 10. And that gives me 352.8 divided by 18, which will give me the same answer as this here. Okay, so I'm not going to need to do anything to my answer. And the best way to do division without a calculator is to do bus stop method. So 352.8 divided by 18. Now, because I'm dividing by quite a large number, it helps to have the times table written down the side. So I've got 18. If I add another 10, that's 28, plus 6 is going to give, plus 8, sorry, is going to give me 36. Add another 10, that's 46. Add 8, that gives me 54. So I'm adding 10, then adding 8 to make this easier to write the times table down. Then I'm going to add another 10, which is 64, then add 8, that takes me to 72. 10 is 82, add 8 takes me to 90. Add another 18, I've got 108. Add 10, and I've got 118. Add 8 is 126. I might need more, but let's see how we go. Right, so 18s into 35. Well, that only goes once because 2 18s is 36. So it only goes in once into 35, 18s into 35. And then I've got to work out my remainder from 35 to 18, what's left over. So I'm going to write 18 down here and I'm going to subtract. So I have to borrow from there, so that becomes a 2. Can't really see that very well. And then 15 take away 8 is 7. 2 take away 1 is 2. So I'm left with 17 left over. So I have to carry this 17 over. I can bring this 2 down here. So I've now got to see 18s into 172. So I'm going to need to carry this on over here. So let's add another 10, which is 36. Add 8 is 144. Add another 10 is 154. Add 8 is 162. And then I get to 180, which is 10 times 18. So into 172, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. And it's 162, so I'm left with a remainder of 10. So I can put my remainder up here. You don't have to always carry down. So 18s into 108 goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So my final answer, and I remember I don't need to change it, I had an equivalent sum for 3 marks, is 19.6. Division always seems to catch people out, but every year there has been a multiplication or a division question of some sort on the non-calculator paper, and quite often they like to put decimals in there. Okay, question 18 again. There is always a question to either do HCF, LCM or product of primes. So if you're not sure how to do any of those, I would definitely revise those ahead of Thursday, because they always come up on the non-calculator paper, and there probably will be one on the calculator paper as well. So you probably get 2 out of the 3 of these. So highest common factor of 84 and 120. The quickest way to do this is to write them as product of their prime factors first, or prime factor trees. So I take the first prime number, which is 2, and I'm putting it in a circle because it's a prime number. And 2 times 42 is 84. So now can I divide 42 by 2 again? Yes, I can. 2 times 21 gives me 42. I can no longer divide 21 by 2, so my next prime number is 3. And 3 times 7 is 21. That's also a prime number, so I stop there. Now I'm going to do the same with 120. 2 times 60 is 120. 2 times 30 is 60. 2 times 15 is 30. And then 3 times 5 is 15. So I've written both my numbers as product of their prime. Well, I've written them as prime factor trees. To write as product of primes, I would need to write these prime numbers out with time signs in between. However, I'm doing the HCF and LCM, so I'm going to draw myself a Venn diagram. So I've got 2 overlapping circles here. This one's going to be for 84 and this one is going to be for 120. And in the middle of my diagram here is going to be any numbers that I've got common to both of these diagrams, both of these factor trees. So I've got a pair of 2's. So I cross those out and put a 2 in the middle. I've got another pair of 2's, so I cross those 2 out and put a 2 in the middle. I've also got a pair of 3's, and that's it. I've got nothing else that's common to both. Now, whatever I've got left over, I've got a 7 here, that's going to go over there, goes in my other bubbles. And I've got a 2 and a 5 here, so that's going to go on the right-hand side with 120. That's going to go over there. So once I've done this, my highest common factor, you always multiply together the ones in the middle. So the ones in the middle here give you your highest common factor. So that will be 2 times 3, which is 4 times 3 is 12. If you were asked, because you could be asked this, lowest common multiple, you times all the numbers in the diagram together. So I would do 7 times 2, which is my middle, times 3, times 2, times 5. And that's all of these numbers times together, if you're asked for the lowest common multiple. But my answer is 12, as I was asked for my highest common factor. So that's it for question 18. Question 19, and you have been asked to factorise fully. People often get confused with factorising, but it means put it into brackets. Expand is to take it out, factorise is to put it in. I like to do 2 bubbles and put in the common factors. So let's have a look at 12 and 8. I've got the highest number that goes into 12 and 8 is 4. There are other numbers, but the highest number that goes into 12 and 8 is 4. If you don't use the highest common factor, you won't get the full 2 marks. So now I need to look at what I multiply 4 by to get 12, or 4 times 3 is 12. And what do I multiply 4 by to get 8? Well, 4 times 2 is 8. So 4 times 3 are the factors of 12 and 4 times 2 are the factors of 8. I also have an m here, so I need an m. And this side I've got m squared, so that's m multiplied by m. So that's my factors broken down into bubbles. So now I need to look at what's common to both bubbles. Well, I've got a 4. So that can go on the outside of my bracket, and I've also got an m. So I can have 4m on the outside of my bracket, and that's the highest common factor taken out. Whatever I've got left goes on the inside. So I've got a 3, the sign is positive, and I've got a 2 left over here, and an m, so 2m. So my final answer, you can't see that very well, so I'll write it here, is 4m 3 plus 2m. And you can check it by expanding it back out again. 4m times 3 is 12m, and 4m times 2m is 8m squared, which is what I had originally. So I'm just going to rub that out, but that means it is the correct answer. So that is my final answer for 2 marks. As I said earlier, if you have taken out just the 4 or just the m, or maybe you've used 2 instead of 4, you can get one of the marks, but you won't get both of them. Okay, part B, you have been asked to solve. So you have been asked to solve. Now there's 2 marks here. Sometimes this is worth 3, depends on how generous they're feeling. So first of all, your first mark is for expanding the bracket, even if you can't do anything else. So 3 multiplied by n is 3n, and 3 multiplied by -5 is -15. Excuse me. And that equals 27. So as I said, sometimes you get a mark just for expanding the bracket. Now when I'm solving equations, I like to put a line down the middle, and I need to get n on its own here. So first of all, I'm going to deal with this -15, and the opposite of taking 15 is to add 15. And whatever I do to the left-hand side, I have to do to the right. So that leaves me with 3n. I haven't touched that yet. -15 add 15 is 0, so that gets rid of that. And 27 add 15 is 42. And then I've got 3 lots of, which means times. The opposite of times is to divide. So divide by 3 on both sides. Divide and times by 3 cancel each other out. So that leaves me with just n. And 42 divided by 3 is going to be 14. If you're not sure how to do 42 divided by 3 in your head, you can do it like this. 42 divided by 3. 3's into 4 goes once, so the remainder of 1. 3's into 12 goes 4 times. So n is 14. And again, you can check this by substituting it back into your original expression. So we had 3 bracket n, which I now know is 14, minus 5. Let's see, does that equal 27? Well, 14 minus 5 is 9. And if I times 9 by 3, I do indeed get 27. So therefore, I know that I've worked it out correctly. So my answer is 14 for 2 marks. I'd imagine your first marks for expanding the bracket or for getting to 3n equals 42, and then 2 marks if you've got 14 as your answer. So that's question 19. Okay, question 20. You have a parallelogram, or you can see that from the diagram. CBE, so this line here is a straight line. BAD, so BAD, let's have a look. I've got BAD, so if you trace it, that tells me it's this angle here, but we can see that anyway because it's on my diagram here, is 128. AEB, well again, if I go AEB, that's this angle up here, but again I can see that because it's on my diagram, so that is 39 there. So all of this information I'm given here is just telling me about this diagram that I've got. Now I've got to find the size of angle BAE. So BAE, if I go B to A and then to E, that's like that. So the angle I'm being asked to find is this one here. This is angle BAE in there. So now I've got to figure out how I can do that with the information that I've been given. So the fact that you've got parallel lines here and here, but you've also got another pair of parallel lines here and here, suggests I'm going to have to use those in some way. And you've been told that you've got a parallelogram. So with questions like these, even if you don't know how to get to the answer, work out as many angles as you can, put them on the diagram, and it's asked for reasons for each stage. So every time you work out an angle, write the reason down. And even if you don't get to the answer, you might still get some of the marks. So the first thing I would do is I would know that this angle over here, because I've got parallelogram, opposite angles in a parallelogram are equal. So that would be 128. So I would then write angle DCB equals 128, and the reason for that is opposite angles in a parallelogram, they'll give you more space to work out than this, but obviously I've cut and pasted these questions. Opposite angles in a parallelogram are equal, so every time I work out an angle I write a reason that goes with it. So the other thing that you need to know about parallelograms is you've got co-interior angles here, you see this C, so back to front C, and if you know about parallel lines, when you've got co-interior angles, they add up to 180 degrees. And then you also can look for 2 other shapes in parallel lines. You have an F that looks like this, and they are called corresponding angles, and they are equal. And you've also got Z, they're called alternate angles, and they are also equal. But the co-interior angles, the C, which I've got here, add to 180. So that tells me that this angle up here, which is angle ABC or CBA, ABC, is equal to 180 minus 128, because that's going to give me 52, because co-interior, I'm going to write abbreviated, but you should write in full, angles are equal. Okay, so I'm going to put it on the diagram as well, just in case you don't know how to label the angles properly. And that's fine. So now how's that going to help me? I'm still trying to get to this angle over here, so I'm just working out as many angles as I can think of. There may be quicker ways of doing this question. Now you've got a line here, a straight line, so you should know that these two angles here add up to 180. Well, I already know that this bit's 52, so I can now work out this angle in here, this angle here, which is angle ABE, or angle EBA, and that's going to be 180 minus 52 because of that straight line that I had. So that gives me 128, and that's because angles on a line equal 180. So again, I'm writing the reason down every time. Your reasons are worth sometimes more marks than your actual angles yourself, sometimes half marks. So 128, I'm also going to put it on the diagram. And now you should see that you've got at the top here, I'm running out of colours. Let's go with a different colour. Let's go with pink. So you've got a nice triangle here at the top. So you should, and you've got this angle in here is 39. This one's 128, and you want this last one in here. So angles in a triangle, hopefully you know 180. So to get BAE, which is the angle I've been looking for, I'm going to do 180 minus my 39 plus my 128 that I already had. So 128 add 39. 9 add 8 is 17. 3 add 2 add 1 is 6, so it's 167. So I'm going to do 180 minus 167, which is 13 degrees. And I have to write my reason because I haven't got that one down yet. Angles in a triangle equal 180 degrees. So every time I've worked out an angle, I've wrote down my reasons, and that is how you work out a question like this. Obviously you would have more space and you would set it out downwards rather than all over the page like I've done here, but the final answer is 13 degrees. But you wouldn't get all the marks without reasons for each stage of your working. Okay, not far to go now. Question 20. You've asked to show the inequality n is greater than 2 on this number line here. So as long as the letter, bit tip for you here, as long as the letter is on the left-hand side, you're going to draw an arrow in the direction of this inequality symbol here. So your arrow is going to be pointing in the same direction as that symbol. That only works if the letter's on the left-hand side. So now I need to look at my number 2. So my number 2 here, I draw a circle at 2. So, and then you either need to draw a hollow circle or a shaded circle. If you've got this line underneath, you draw it, which means greater than or less than or equal to, then you fill it in. If you don't have the equal to line underneath, like we've got here, you leave it hollow. Okay, and then my arrow, we already know, is going to be pointing this way, so I'm just going to draw an arrow to the end of my number line like that. So you get a mark for having the correct shaded circle and another mark for having your arrow pointing in the right direction, because n has got to be less than 2, which is to the left-hand side. Okay, next one. It says y is greater than or equal to 4, and y is less than 8. So I've got to, it tells me y is an integer. This is a whole number. So I've got to write down all the possible values of y. So because this one's got a line underneath, that means 4 is included. This one does not have a line underneath, so it means it's less than 8 but doesn't include 8. So let's start at 4. We can have 5 is the next whole number. We can have 6. We can have 7, but we can't have 8 because it's just less than 8. It's not less than or equal to 8. It was like this symbol up here. So that's it there. They are my answer for 2 marks. If you had all of those correct with no extras, you'd get 2. If you only had 3 of them, for example, 5, 6, 7, they might give you 1 mark. You normally lose the marks if you've included the 8. So that's it for question 21. Okay, question 22. I have a cylinder with a radius of 5 and a height of 12. Now they give you the formula on the front of the exam paper, not for a cylinder, but they give you a prism. So you think about it, a prism, they give you this. So that's a prism, which means it's the same shape all the way through. So look, if I was to cut this here, it would still be the same shape. And if I was to cut it here, it would still be the same shape. If we think about a cylinder, anywhere you cut a cylinder is going to be a circle, isn't it? Anywhere you cut through there. So it is essentially a prism. So they give you this formula and they say volume of a prism is area of cross-section times length. Well, the cross-section is this bit that's going to be the same all the way through. And then the length is here. So with a cylinder, the way that works is this is your cross-section, this circular bit here. So you're going to do the area of a circle. And instead of times length, because it's up this way, you're going to times it by the height. So they also give you the area of a circle, which is pi r squared. So the area of my cross-section in this cylinder is a circle because it's circular all the way down. And then I'm going to times that to get my volume. I'm going to do my area of my cross-section times height or length. In this example, it's height. So pi r squared times height. And it says give your answer in terms of pi. So I'm going to do pi times, and it tells me my radius is 5. 5 squared times my height, which is 12. So I'm going to do pi times 25 times 12. And now I've got to work out, so again, this is more multiplication, 25 times 12. 2 times 5 is 10, 2 times 2 is 4, plus this one here is 5. Then when I'm timesing by the 1, because it's in the tens column, I showed you this earlier, you have to put a placeholder of a 0. So I'm going to do this bit in green. 1 times 5 is 5, and 1 times 2 is 2. And then I add my 2 answers together. So I get 0, 10, 300. So, but that's the answer to this. Don't forget you need to leave pi in your answer. So my final answer is 300 pi centimetres squared. And that's it for 2 marks. Okay, question 23. You have an arithmetic sequence, which means it goes up by the same amount each time. So I'm going to draw the sequence here. You've been asked to find the nth term. First thing you need to do is find out what your sequence is increasing by. So you should see here it's adding on 4 each time. So whatever you're adding goes in front. Your nth term will always look something like this. So you'll have something in front of n and something here. A number here in front of n and a number here at the end. So this number here, this one, is going to be whatever it's increasing by. So that's going to be 4n. And this number here is whatever the term before the first term would be. So if I was to go back 4, that tells me it's -7. So this is going to be -7. So my final answer is 4n minus 7. So the number in front of n is whatever it's increasing or decreasing by. The number at the end is the term before if you had one. So that is my answer there. Now, part B gives me the nth term of a different sequence, 2n minus 3. And it says, is 101 a term in the sequence? This is a very common question. The way you answer this is you equal it to 101 and you solve it. Now, solving this N tells me where 101 would be in the sequence. Now, if I get N as 2.5, for example, or as a decimal, then this can't be in the sequence because you can only have like the first number, the second number, the third number, the fourth number, the fifth number. So if you get anything in between here, when you solve that, you know this number can't be in the sequence. So that's why you equal it to the nth term. So get rid of that so I can show you what to do there. So I'm going to get rid of those. So I'm going to solve this. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. We went through solving earlier, and that gives me 2n equals 104. Divide by 2 on both sides, and that gives me n is a whole number. N is 52. So therefore it is in the sequence. It's the 52nd term in the sequence. And this is me showing how I got my answer. So yes, it's asked me a question, so I have to answer. Yes, it is. It is the 52nd term. You don't even need to say the second part. You could just say yes, it is with this working out, and that would be enough to get your marks for that question. Okay, question 24. Again, reverse percentages. If it's going to come up, it's more likely to come up on a non-calculated paper, and it's been on 3 out of the last 4 years. There's been a question on reverse percentages. So in a sale, the normal price of a car is reduced by 30%. The sale price, this is important, the sale price of the car is 6,300, but it's already been reduced by 30%. It tells me that here. I've got to work out the normal price. So if you see normal or original, that tells you it's a reverse percentage. So I like to draw mine in a box like this. And I'm going to split it into 3. It's like a 6-pack. What every lad wishes they could have in the summer, I'm sure. So I have got my starting price, which is my sale price, is 6,300. Now remember, it's already been reduced by 30%. So it would have started off at 100% of its value, and it's had my 30% taken off, so it's only worth 70% of its original value. So you start off working out this. This bit normally gives you a mark, not always, but sometimes, to show that you know 6,300 is only worth 70%. You've got to get back to the normal price, which is 100%, the maximum value. Now, you can't just work out 30% of that and add it back on, because 30% of the original price is not going to be the same as 30% of 6,300. So you can't do that. That's why it's question 24, not earlier on in the paper. So you need to find a number that goes nicely into 70 and 100. So I'm going to use 10% because that goes nicely into both of those numbers. So I now need to think, how many 10% go into 70? Well, that is 7. So I've divided by 7. So if I've divided this side by 7, I have to divide my 6,300 by 7. Well, 63 divided by 7 is 9. So it's going to be 900. And then I've got to get from 10% back to 100%, so I need to multiply by 10. So again, I need to do the same over here. So my original price of my car must have been £9,000. And again, you can work it out and just double check. 10% of 9,000 would be 900. Times that by 3, that's 2,700. Take that away, you've got the sale price here, which is 6,300. But you've got to watch out for that. It's a reverse percentage. You've got to work backwards, and you don't work out percentages in the normal way. Okay, question 25. Again, I've seen this. There's always a graph question, always without fail, on one of your papers, and they seem to like putting quadratics in on the non-calculated paper, which is why it's in here. On the calculated paper, you can do it nicely on your calculator with a table of values. But it's on a non-calculated paper quite often. So you've been given your x values here. You've got to work out your y. Well, this tells you here how to work them out. It says y equals whatever x is squared minus 3 lots of x x squared minus 3 lots of x minus 1. So all you're doing here is substitution. So you do normally get lots of space for this. So I'm gonna start with it's always easier to start with the positive. I'm going to start with x as 4. So I'm going to write y equals, but instead of x squared, I'm going to write 4 squared, and I'm putting it in a bracket. And then minus 3 lots of x, but I'm going to write minus 3 lots of 4 minus 1. All I've done is I've swapped these x's here for this 4 that I had here. I've substituted them in. And that will give me y will equal y. So 4 squared is 16. 3 lots of 4 is 12 minus 1. So 16 minus 12 is 4. Minus 1 is 3. So my first y value is 3. And you need to do that with every coordinate. You will start to see a pattern, but we'll look at that in a minute. So now let's do it with 3. So y equals 3 squared minus 3 lots of 3 minus 1. 3 squared is 9. Minus 9 is 0. Minus 1 is negative 1. So that's my next value. And I'm going to do it with 2. I don't need to keep writing y equals. I'm just going to substitute it in now that you get the idea. So 2 squared minus 3 lots of 2 minus 1. So that's 4. Take 6 minus 1. 4 take 6 is negative 2. Take away 1 is negative 3. Not lots of mistakes often made on this question if you're not very good with working with negatives. Then I'm going to do 1, which is my next x value. I'm here now. So 1 squared minus 3 lots of 1 minus 1. 1 squared is 1 minus 3 minus 1. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Take 1 is negative 3. So here I'm starting to see a pattern. And then I'm going to do 0. So 0 squared minus 3. So I've put plus there. Minus 3 lots of 0 minus 1. Well, 0 squared is 0. 3 lots of 0 is 0. So you're just left with negative 1. Now, can you see that you've got these two are the same and these two are the same? So what do you think this is going to be? Yeah, you've got it. It starts to mirror. That's going to be 3. Okay, but I'll do it just to show you. Negative 1 squared. This is where people often go wrong. Negative 3 times negative 1, take 1. Negative 1 squared is negative 1 times negative 1, which is positive 1. So that gives me a positive 1 there. Then you've got negative 3 times negative 1, which is also a positive 3. This is where people often go wrong with the signs. Take 1. 1 plus 3 is 4, take away 1 is 3, which is what I got here. I knew that because I'd started to see the pattern that starts to mirror itself like this. And the reason it does that is because the shape of the graph. You should know a quadratic graph, an x squared graph, is a U shape. Now, you might not get the whole U shape, but you might get part of it, you see. So it does start to mirror itself. The only issue is that's not going to help us with the last one because we don't have any more value. So I am going to have to work out this last one. But knowing the shape will help you when you come to drawing the graph. So now I've got to do this one. So negative 2 squared minus 3 lots of negative 2, take 1. Negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4. Negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. Take 1. 4 add 6 is 10. Take away 1 is 9. So my last point there is 9. Now, when you draw this, you must draw it with a curve. You must plot all your points as coordinates and you must join them up. So these are my coordinate pairs here that I'm going to now plot. You've got an X and you've got a Y. So you're going to plot these on your graph. So I'm going to start with negative 2, 9, and that's going to go here. I'm plotting these in green. Negative 1, 3 is here. Then I've got this one, which is 0, negative 1. Then I've got this one, which is 1, negative 3. And then I've got this one, which is 2, negative 3. And then I've got 3, negative 1. And I've got 4, 3. So that's me plotting all my points. If I left it like that, you're going to lose a mark for not joining them up. And the other thing you should not do is have it a bottom like that, straight bottom. They have to have a curved bottom, a peachy bum, as we say. So you're gonna join them up like this. Obviously your freehand will be better than mine doing it on here, but you join it up freehand with a curve, and it must not have a flat bottom, it must have a curved bottom. So that's how you get all the marks for drawing your graph. So I've drawn the graph, I've done part A here, and it says use the graph to estimate the turning point of the graph. So the turning point is this point here at the bottom. Now I've not drawn mine very well, so let's go back a bit. The turning point is this point here. So I'm gonna, if I'd drawn mine properly, mine would have probably been more like this. So the turning point is going to be around here somewhere. So I'm going to say there. So that point there is, if I go down and then across, that's going to give me my X and Y. So my X is going to be 1.5 and my Y, so I'm going to put 1.5. My turning point will be a coordinate. And my Y, it's -3 and 1 square. Well, there's only 5 squares there. So each square must be worth 0.2. So -3.2. So that is my turning point there. Okay, question 26. We've only got 2 more questions to go. Nearly there. So again, probability tree, you'll either have a probability tree or a frequency tree, I'd imagine, on your first paper, and there'll definitely be one or both of those on the others, if not the first one. So Rachel's got 2 bags. Here's my first bag, here's my second. In the first bag, there are 4 red and 6 green. In the second bag, there are 3 red and 5 green. Rachel takes at random a ball from the first bag, and she then takes a ball from the second bag. Complete the tree diagram. So these 2 branches here are all to do with my first bag only. Okay, so 4 red and 6 green, and on a probability tree, which it tells me it's a probability tree, I have to write my probabilities as fractions. So the probability of me getting a red is 4 out of the total, which is 4 plus 6, which is 10. So 4/10 of it being red, therefore 6 green, so 6/10 being green. This is not a fraction line, this is just a space to write your answer, so you do need to put your fraction line in there. Right, now these 2 here are all to do with my second bag. Okay, so they're all, these 2 sets of branches, this set of branches here is going to be the same as this set of branches here. And each set of branches has to add up to 1, because that's the maximum you can get for probability. So I am told in the second bag there are 3 red and 5 green. So that means there's a total of 8 this time, because 3 red and 5 green is 8. So the probability of a red is 3 out of 8 and a green is 5 out of 8. And this replicates down here, 3 out of 8, 5 out of 8, because this is still to do with the second bag. The only time this one at the bottom would be different is if there was a condition to the probability. So this shows me all my possible outcomes. I could get a red from the first bag, then a red from the second. I could get a red from the first bag, then a green from the second. I could get a green from the first bag, then a red from the second, a green from the first bag, and a green from the second. It just shows me all my possible probabilities. So I want to know the probability Rachel takes 2 green balls. So I want her to take a green and then to take another green. And when you go along the branches of your probability tree, you multiply, because you want them both to happen. I want green and green, which means I multiply. So green from the first bag was 6 out of 10. Green from the second bag was 5 out of 8. I'm going along my tree and I multiply those together. So that's going to give me 30. 6 times 5 is 30. And 10 times 8 is 80. I do not need to simplify. You still get full marks for 30 out of 80. You can write 3 out of 8, but if you simplify incorrectly, you lose marks. You don't simplify unless the question specifically asks you to. So that's it for 2 marks there, 30 out of 80. Okay, we're here. Last question. Right, so tricky one, this one. You've been asked to calculate the length AC, which is this line here. And you've got an angle of 30 degrees and a side of 20. So in a right angled triangle, you're either going to be using, if you're finding missing sides, or you're going to be using Pythagoras. But you'd need to know the other two sides, which we don't, so we can't use that. The only other thing we can use in a right angle triangle is SOHCAHTOA. And you do get the formulas for these on the front of the exam paper. But I prefer to use the triangles that some of you will have been taught. Anyway, so we're going to be using SOHCAHTOA. So the first thing you do with SOHCAHTOA is you're going to label, and I'm just going to get rid of that. You're going to label the sides that you've got. Okay, and you're going to work out which ratio you're using. So first thing I'm going to do, this is the angle I've been given. I'm trying to find this side over here, so I'm going to call that X. So now if I want to label this side over here, it's opposite the angle that I've got. So that is the opposite side. The side that I'm trying to find, this one here, AC, is opposite the right angle. So that's the hypotenuse, H. We don't need to label this one down here because it's not involved in the question. I only label the one that I have and the one that I'm trying to find. So O and H tells me, if you're familiar with these triangles, that I'm using the SO triangle, and that's the sine. S is for sine. Sine triangle. So in order to find this hypotenuse, which is the side that I want over here, I'm going to do O, which is my opposite side, divided by S. So I'm going to do my opposite side, which is 20, divided by sine, and always with sine, cosine and tan, you put the angle. If you don't know the angle, you can put X, but I do know the angle is 30. So this is the calculation. It'll get you 1 mark for identifying the correct calculation. So I've got to do 20 divided by sine 30. Issue is, I don't have a calculator, so I've got to work out sine 30. I do it by using the fingers. Let's see if I can draw a hand. It looks very much like an alien's hand, but anyway, there we are. So this is my hand, this is my thumb up here, and this is meant to be my little finger. That actually looks more like a thumb, doesn't it? Let's see if I can redraw that quickly. It looks like too much like a thumb there at the bottom. Okay, hang on. So let's go thumb. And then fingers, 1, 2, that's even more alien than the first one. But anyway, so this is my thumb here. I always label as, let's do them in different, is 90 degrees. This is 0 at the bottom. Then I've got 30 degrees, I've got 45 degrees, and I've got 60 degrees. So that's each of my fingers. Okay, and the rule is for sine, and you'll understand a bit more in a minute, is the square root of the fingers below over 2. Okay, whereas this is for sine. If you're doing cosine, if you're asked to do cosine, it's the square root of the fingers above over 2. Tan's different. We won't do tan today, but anyway, so that's how you do it. So let's explain how to do that. So I am doing here sine of 30, and sine of 30 is on this second finger above my little finger. So how many fingers have I got below that? Well, I've just got this one here. So the number of fingers I've got below is 1. So sine of 30 is the square root of 1 over 2. If I was doing sine of 60, it'd be square root of 1, 2, 3 over 2. If I was doing sine of 90, square root of 1, 2, 3, 4 over 2. So that's 45 would be 2 over 2. But I'm doing sine of 30. So I'm doing the square root of 1 over 2 because I've got 1 finger below my 30 finger. And the square root of 1 is just 1. So it's a half. So the calculation I'm doing, I now know that sine 30 is a half, so I can swap that in here. So I'm actually doing 20 divided by a half, or 0.5, is the calculation. So working that out, that sine 30 is a half, will give you another mark. I've now just got to work out what 20 divided by 0.5 is. So again, if you remember earlier, we did dividing with decimals. I'm going to times this by 10, and I'm going to times this by 10, and that will give me an equivalent sum, so I don't need to do anything to my answer. It will give me the same answer. So 200 divided by 5 will give me the same answer as 20 divided by 0.5. So the easiest way to divide by 5, if you haven't got a calculator, I always divide by 10 and double my answer, because 5 goes in twice as many times as 10 does. So 200 divided by 10 is 20. So 200 divided by 5 will be 40. And that is my 3 marks for my answer. So that is it. So I hope that it's been helpful. Hopefully those topics come up and you find that useful. Please let me know if you've got any questions. And if you found that helpful, give us a like so that other people can find the video. All right, good luck with your exam on Thursday. I'm sure you will be fantastic.